Hey guys, so if you've been thinking about moving to Florida and you're wondering if it's going to be a good fit for you, here are 7 big negatives that you're going to want to know about first before you move down, because if you can't handle these 7 big negatives, I probably wouldn't recommend moving to Florida. And at the end, I'm going to give you my number 8, which in my opinion is one of the biggest negatives for me, and it's also why I'm going to be buying a small second home later out of state this year. So let's get into it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Connor, and I'm actually a Florida transplant of sorts. So I've been down here for about a decade, but originally I'm from New Jersey. And so I know all of what it's like to be up north and the difference between there. I've lived in 3 different cities in Florida, so I've got a great perspective on what it's kind of like living outside of Florida and what it's like living inside of Florida. And so this is where I'm getting my 7 big negatives from. So number 1, crazy drivers. One of the big things I noticed when I came down to Florida was that the drivers here are often insane. On highways and stuff like that, I just saw way more accidents than I was used to seeing. And so that definitely put me a little bit on edge to start because you've got people coming from all different places. Florida has so much out of state and international migration that when you take drivers from all over the US, then you throw some international in and you stir it up and you put them all on the highway, it gets a little messy. And Florida, statistically, is actually number 3 for most fatalities in the US after Texas and California. Texas is number 1, California is number 2. So it's not just a personal experience, that's also kind of the statistics behind it. So number 1, definitely crazy drivers. Number 2 is going to be the weather. Yes, a lot of people do come down for the weather, but what you don't anticipate, especially if you live up north or not in a tropical climate like this, is that we get severe rainstorms. We also get hurricanes. We do have a lot of power outages and stuff too from different inclement weather. And so that's something that you're probably not going to be used to. And as far as a hurricane happening, it's not like a once in a blue moon sort of thing. On average, we get hurricanes about once every 3 years. So if you live down here, you're probably going to own the home for at least 5 years. You're going to experience a hurricane. And when you do, you're going to want to make sure you buy your supplies early and that you're not, at the store the day before, because I promise you there will be no water left on the shelves. All the non-perishables and stuff will be gone. So that is something you want to get on top of because the locals around here will be on top of it. So if there's a big hurricane coming, get to the store a week before. That way you don't have to, rush or, buy the water brands you don't like. Along that same topic, we do have a little bit of flooding depending where you're at, which is good if you're moving here to make sure your real estate agent really gets you educated on what areas have worse flooding than others. And also, obviously, you're gonna have flood insurance. And there's areas that have a need for flood insurance, be like an AE zone, or areas that don't need flood insurance, which are the least likely to flood. The best rating, which would be an X. That's a little tidbit for you. Number 3, people and attitudes. Now, this one I'm kind of just stating as a fact. I'm not saying it's a positive or it's a negative, but down in Florida, it's definitely a red state. And so as far as, people being more focused on freedom or being a little bit more laid back, there's kind of that beach vibe to it. And so when it comes to especially things like COVID and all, not a lot of people are wearing masks. And so if you're not kind of acclimated to that or not okay with that, of more of, I'll do my own thing, you do your own thing kind of attitude, that's something that might clash a little bit when you come down to Florida, because that's definitely the attitude here. If you go to bars and stuff, some people will be completely masked up, and sometimes, a lot of people won't be, even in grocery stores. And this isn't just, your spring break teenagers, stuff like this. I mean, this is also, 95-year-old people. Some people just, they care about certain things or don't. So that's also a good thing to know. If that's kind of a big turnoff for you or a big conflict point, maybe it's not the right fit for you. That being said, everyone's super friendly. I don't think anyone's very confrontational, but you will see that leniency and that laid back attitude with people down here in Florida. Number 4, power outages. So this is something that I didn't experience a lot until I came down here, but we do have power outages a lot more frequently and also power surges. And you don't really get to choose your power company. There's just generally one power company for the area. So when you buy a home, you'll kind of find out, okay, for example, if it's in Tampa, is it TECO, T-E-C-O, or maybe it's Duke Energy if you're by St. Pete, if we're talking about Tampa Bay. So there are a good amount more power outages. Doesn't happen all the time, but you will see every now and again the clock on your, stove or your microwave and stuff, it's going to be wrong because at some point during the night, maybe the power went off for 5 minutes. Other times they can be longer, but that's something also you're going to want to keep an eye out for. Number 5, everything takes much longer when it comes to Florida. And from my experience, one of the big things I'm talking about is when you hire a contractor or you hire a handyman or an electrician or anything. If you come from, New York, New Jersey, that kind of tri-state area, or any other areas where it's much faster paced, you're just used to people being on stuff, maybe going above and beyond and just being on top of it in general. And what you'll find in Florida is that a lot of people, again, they're just more laid back. So, that pool that might take 2 months to build up in New Jersey, might take 6 months down here to build. That contractor who might finish a job in New York City in a matter of like 1 week, it could be a 3-month job here. And so it's really good to make sure when it comes to vendors and stuff like that, you have your go-to people. And those go-to people are gold here, because when you can find someone, who works just as hard as you want them to work and just as fast as you want them to work, you're definitely not going to want to be working with the people that are going to take forever. And I'm not the most patient person when it comes to stuff like that, especially if I've got a client who's looking to do something in real estate, whether it's, a little renovation or some cosmetic stuff. I like things to be done in a timely manner. And so that's something that has gone under my nerves a little bit as far as people not moving at the pace I want them to move at. But it's just something you got to accept. That's just kind of the rhythm or the speed, down here in Florida. And it's just something you kind of have to get used to. Number 6 is going to be your vacationers. So there's definitely a big difference in terms of like a winter boom when people are coming, they're escaping Canada or they're escaping Minnesota or wherever there's 2 feet of snow and they're coming to Florida during the winter. You can definitely tell the difference when you go to grocery stores or by the beach, or if you're going to a restaurant, everything's just going to be a little bit more packed. So you have to be okay and you have to be accepting of those people because you're coming down too. So most people in Florida, just like myself, come from out of state. So you kind of have to be accepting that more people are going to, smell the coffee and want to come to Florida because it's just life's a little bit better. So that is one thing you have to get used to too. Also, you have the spring breakers during the spring, which is going to be more on the younger side. And then so they're going to be flooding the bars, they're going to be flooding the beaches. Maybe you see a little bit more public intoxication or drinking. But for the most part, they're usually concentrated around certain areas. So it's not like this widespread thing where you can't find any part of the beach where there's not just, underage drinking or overage drinking, whatever, going on everywhere. If that's not your vibe, if that's not what you're looking for. So both of those, yes, you'll see a little bit of fluctuation. Overall, not that big of a deal, but something to be aware of too, because I wasn't expecting it when I moved down here. And then number 7 is going to be the dangerous wildlife. So initially being from New Jersey, what we had to watch out for were like bears, and that's pretty much it. But there really weren't, like any bears around. But gators here are a very real thing. There are gators everywhere. I'm scared of them. I know a lot of people who are born here, aren't. They kind of get used to them. They'll leave you alone. But gators are a very real thing. Pretty much any body of water that's open, you have to be able to assume that there could be a gator in there because they will walk. They don't need to be in water. They can, walk between bodies, which is the same thing if you're playing on a golf course. Sometimes you want to be a little bit careful when you go to, swing a ball if it's like right by the water, because there is a very good likelihood that there's a gator in there. Now, for the most part, yeah, they, leave people alone, and, people all the time, kayak, rivers and stuff like that in Florida, which has plenty of gators, and they're not bothered by it. For me, it's a little too much. It's a prehistoric killer. I'm not really trying to get within a 6-foot radius of them. Dangerous wildlife as well. You also have some snakes, and different stuff like that you got to watch out for. We actually do have coyotes too, which can be like around the neighborhoods and stuff as well. So that's something that most people don't know about. I didn't actually know about for like the first few years I lived here, but there actually are coyotes around here too. And then one thing that's kind of annoying to me is we have these little like sand spurs, and when you're walking around, they've got the spikes on the end, and they'll get stuck in your socks or get stuck on your feet. And it really hurts actually. When I was actually selling a lot recently, and I was walking through to take a video, and I had like 30, 40, 50 of them just all on my shoe and my socks, my ankles, and just pulling them off hurt too. So that's kind of more of a pet peeve, but dangerous wildlife, definitely a thing, definitely something to be cognizant of. Do you really need to worry about it? No. Are you gonna get eaten by an alligator? No, but it's something to be aware of, yes. All right, guys, and now number 8, and this is one big thing for me. It's actually the reason that I'm gonna be buying a second home this year outside of Florida, is there is no elevation. There's really none. If you want to get elevation, you're gonna have to go to a rooftop bar. Everything is pretty flat. And so as far as mountain vistas or any uphill hiking, if you like that kind of stuff, you're not gonna find it here. And that's why I'm actually looking at like a second home in terms of like a little mountain cabin, probably somewhere, maybe North Carolina, something like that this year. So if that's something you're used to, you're gonna have to sort of transition from, you know, uphill climbing, mountains and all of that to beach sunsets, beach sunrises, some kayaking, water sports stuff. Not necessarily a bad trade-off, but definitely something to be aware of that you're not gonna find uphill hiking. It's really hard to even find a hill here, rather less a mountain. So there you go, guys. Those are my 7 big negatives that you need to be aware of before you move to Florida. And if you can't handle those, then, you know, maybe it's not the best state for you. If you have any other negatives that you can think about, feel free to drop a comment below. Obviously, I'd love to hear some positives too from everyone who does live in Florida, because there's a lot of positives. That wasn't the point of this video, but I personally love living in Florida. I don't want to move, but there are some things that, you know, it's good to be aware of. And then if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. And if you like real estate, or if you want to learn more about the Tampa Bay market or anything in between, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I make more videos just like this about the local area, about Florida, as well as real estate investing. And I make sure that it's all super easy to understand, so it's all nice and straightforward. But that's it for me today, guys. So until next time, this is Conor Green. Have a blessed day.